What's up, YouTubers? My name is Bill from Realm Games, and if you're watching this video, that means you've probably stumbled across our YouTube page. Thank you so much. Welcome to RealmCast. What we're planning to do over the next year or so is give you tips, tricks, seminars, behind-the-scenes looks at what we're doing at Realm Games, as well as some really cool interviews with interesting folks in the tabletop RPG community along the way. So please check out all of the links. Hit that bell and that subscribe button, engage with us over Twitter, and watch us game over Twitch. I look forward to meeting each and every one of you, and thank you so much for your support. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of RealmCast from Realm Games. My name is Bill, founder and chief dungeon master of MRG, and I just have to tell you guys, we're planning some really fun and cool stuff for you all over here at Realm this year, and we hope everyone is staying safe out there right now, above all in these times, as this is being recorded amidst a global pandemic, after all. So thank you all so much for your support. Anyway, follows, donations to our charity campaigns, likes, tweets, you name it. Thanks for watching us game for you all over at Twitch every week. If you like our stuff, please be sure to ring the bell here on YouTube or subscribe to us on Spotify and other areas that you'll find podcasts. On this inaugural episode of RealmCast, I wanted to do something familiar yet interesting. I wanted to take a bit of my seminar content and reformat it a bit. I wanted to personalize things a little, if you will, right? So I do a lot of lists, a lot of top 5, top 10 sort of style things in my convention seminars. And I was thinking a lot about what I wanted to do for the first episode of RealmCast. So I wanted to do something similar, but I'd like to give you one here today that's a little more personal to me. So most of the time in giving talks and advice about TTRPG or tabletop role-playing games, I'm trying to challenge myself to speak openly, more broadly, think about new ways that I might want to dispense knowledge along to folks who are just willing to listen. For today's episode, I didn't want to give you my own personal top 5 tips for a perfect campaign, or a near perfect campaign, I should say. Okay. All right, maybe it was good and we played it out start to finish campaign. I have a couple of ingredients that I include in my recipes when I'm getting started on something like a campaign. And this might be a little bit D&D centric, but it certainly can translate to other systems as well. So I guess without further ado, let's get started on my top 5 tips for a near perfect, maybe okay, we can do better next time campaign. So first point, excitement and intrigue. I think about excitement and intrigue in a couple of ways. So first of all, I would encourage you to leverage familiar story arcs, elements, plot hooks, and tropes from your favorite fantasy, sci-fi novels, television shows and movies. Graphic novels and comics are certainly great as well to reference. Players really enjoy classic stories with your own personal twists, improv, and character development infused in them as a game master. So don't be afraid to borrow and then build upon and iterate upon some of those classic storytelling elements and maybe even storylines and character arcs. The other piece with excitement and intrigue to note is that it's okay to establish and evoke emotional responses, right? Eliciting laughter or terror or dread, happiness or somberness even from a table is a really cool way to validate the experience and the immersion of your gaming and tabletop role-playing experiences overall, more generally. I think if your players are emoting in some type of way, then you're doing a really great job. As far as players at the table, if you're enjoying one another emoting and you're all invested in that story, it's going to be a really fun experience overall. So excitement and intrigue, really important. I think about along those lines as well, being creative, but being structured, asking kind of who and what, where, when, why, sometimes perhaps even how, start to help your characters fill in blanks, and make sure you're always giving their characters purpose. Purpose can sometimes equate to excitement, and I think I'd like to have, a handful of secrets ready, new hooks at the helm every week or month, hike up that level of intrigue with portions of mystery, etc. So The next ingredient for that near perfect campaign experience that I have in my arsenal, whether it be D&D or your next favorite conventional storytelling vehicle or tabletop role-playing game, is the genesis of a great villain. Heroism and villainy, the battle of good versus evil. It really doesn't get more classic than that, and often it truthfully doesn't get old quickly. In fact, it's kept classic gaming alive for generations and generations, storytelling at large for centuries. I like to create villains with power, influence, personality, special abilities. I like to plant seeds of doubt in the players' minds about the likelihood of their characters overcoming this villain. I like to overwhelm them with minions. I like to create strife and struggle. I like to raise questions about the villain's origin, their intent, their weaknesses. Now, I don't think villains should have these long cutscene soliloquies. That's not really fit for gaming. But I think a short and effective brooding, sinister, or perhaps more insidious statement or two can be in bounds. It's more important to showcase a villain's worth with action, however. Whether in raw damage dealing or the consequence of the mistreatment of mankind, or higher stakes even perhaps, or perhaps lower, less epic stakes. You can get creative, you can get evil. It's sort of fun, truth be told, playing the bad guy. The next point in my spice rack, we'll call it, the next point goes hand in hand with the horror. I love creating memorable NPCs. Whether they be goofy and funny and charismatic, or whether they be sad, closed off, and conservative. Interactions and non-combat encounters drive an incredibly valuable part of the game. Roleplay. Okay? So NPCs help to authenticate the world, deliver information and narration to the players, and they can make for some really fun experiences and memories at the table. So thinking back on a couple of characters that I've created over the years, one that my familiar friends and group in Minor Realm Games really enjoy is a character I made up during a campaign that we played about 2 years ago called, and the character was called Ingard. And Ingard started as this, basically this tree ant. It was a living tree, the tree of faith or the tree of hope or something along that lines, on this abandoned, isolated sort of island in the middle of a southern sea. Ingard ended up kind of being so interesting and funny and memorable that we just kind of kept introducing him back in these more meaningful ways over the course of the next few months. He had a funny voice, kind of a high-pitched, a little bit squeaky and inconsistent voice. He had this sage wisdom. He was hundreds of years old. He could manifest or create, form himself into different forms after the curse of the tree was broken. And the hex was lifted. He was sometimes a reliable and unreliable narrator. So it was just a really fun sort of experience there, and it just goes to show that when players continue talking about a character that you create, just not thinking about it for years to come, that there it is, right? That's the magic. I think about. I think it was around the same time we were doing a campaign where I had this, sleeping giant, was covered in trees and rocks and mud, and, the earth was just dried over him. And it was almost, from the player's impression, from their perception, a boulder and an impasse, and creating basically a fork in the road. When they approached, the giant woke and began assaulting them. And in conversation, sort of using diplomacy mid-battle, they actually saw how humble and kind and innocent the giant really was. He just was a cranky giant whenever he was woken, and in fact the giant helped the characters along the way for a moment and guiding them in the proper direction. So it's just sort of interesting things, turning stereotypes on their heads, giving dialogue to perhaps monsters, even in some cases can authenticate the world, become a memorable NPC in and of itself. I think about this sort of half goblin, half gnome in my most recent D&D campaign. Just a nice little sort of guide. He started as a one-off NPC in an arcane tower, as a professor that was analyzing an artifact that the player characters brought to him. He ended up kind of taking a leadership and mentor role of the party. And I have a character actually in Clock Strike Zero, very similar, an old gnome who's forming sort of a mentorship and leadership role to some extent with the party. So there's a lot you can do, whether it be one-off interactions, whether it be more consistent long-term interactions. I think there's something to be said for great NPCs, meaningful non-combat encounters, etc. So the next piece for me in my arsenal is classic dungeon crawls. So 5 to 15 deadly action-packed, slimy, dank rooms below a city or in the mountains in the jungle. Maybe something more mega style, 25, 35, 45 plus chambers, villainy, vermin, traps, crusades. I always toss a few dungeons in with D&D, or I toss, dungeon-like, quote-unquote, experiences in TTRPG systems otherwise. Again, it's familiar, it's fun, it's certainly gaming at its finest, in my opinion, at the very least. I consider dungeons, at least with D&D, kind of like the salt and pepper of the soup, and really of any campaign. And they can serve to be one of the most memorable experiences of an entire run with your table. So have fun with dungeons, have fun sort of sketching them, mapping them out, infesting and populating them, have fun creating a personality or persona or aura for the dungeon itself. Create some traps, maybe a puzzle or two. Don't get too caught up in the puzzle piece. That's my sort of a side piece of advice there. But dungeons can be a lot of fun, and they can make for a whole evening, if not more sessions to come, and become a really important pillar around the experiences in game. The last piece I want to talk about on this inaugural short but sweet episode of RealmCast are cliffhangers. So I do this session every now and then called episodic storytelling. Really important, right? Lots of narration. I include build up. I would implore you to provide recaps, lots of outro. In game, you might want to leave the characters in difficult, precarious places, right? D&D should be called predicaments and dilemmas. I think this is vital to great campaigning. I like leaving the players every couple of sessions in a place that we have to talk about out of game now. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? When we get back to the table, we need to do X, and we might want to try Y, and how are we ever going to overcome this? That's really exciting. Again, it's getting emotion and investment and immersion at the table and away from the table, talking about it through text or chat or phone calls or hanging out. You're going to grab some food or a drink or something, and you're saying, yeah, what are our guys going to do when we get back in there, sort of thing. So cliffhangers, making things feel episodic, sort of connecting them together, I think is all really valuable. So just to recap, excitement and intrigue. I think it's important to flesh out structured stories, add your own personal twist, but feel free to borrow from your favorite classic sci-fi and fantasy. Great villains. Nothing better than the story of good versus evil. Our party of harrowing adventurers have to face a big bad. Make that big bad, authentic, unique in your own way. Again, it's okay to borrow and then build. I think memorable NPCs just overall, whether they be funny, whether they be reserved, whether they be tortured, whether they be full of secrets. NPCs can serve as reliable narrators. They can also serve as a reliable aid to the party or the group. Classic dungeon crawling. Hey, it's just fun. It's in the title of the world's greatest role-playing game. Build dungeons. They can serve to be cornerstones for your campaign. And then finally, cliffhangers, episodic storytelling, build up, recaps, all that sort of stuff. It leaves the characters and then their players in a mindset that's excited to get back to the table each and every session in your campaign. So that's about it. Thank you so much. That's about all for today. Please, again, feel free to subscribe. Check us out on all of the other links. Thanks for watching us game on twitch.tv/MinorRealmGames every single week. Come back to check out more RealmCast at this channel. We have a lot of great content in store for you all. So until next time,